In February 1945, the Pacific theater of World War II was marked by intense fighting, with Iwo Jima becoming a significant battleground. The island was crucial for the United States military, as it offered a base to launch further attacks against Japan. The Japanese forces, aware of its importance, had heavily fortified the island, creating a network of bunkers, tunnels, and gun emplacements. As the U.S. Marines prepared for the assault, they knew the fight would not be easy. The Japanese soldiers were determined to defend their ground, and they had a solid defensive strategy in place. They were well prepared and positioned in the rugged terrain, using the volcanic landscape to their advantage. On February 19, the Marines landed on Iwo Jima. They faced immediate and fierce resistance from the Japanese troops. The Japanese had dug in deep, and the Marines had to fight their way to the top of Mount Suribachi, a critical point on the island. This escalating battle was characterized by brutal close-quarters combat, with Marines encountering hidden machine gun nests and sniper fire that caused heavy casualties. The fighting was grueling. Marines had to stay low, taking cover while advancing through heavy fire. Each inch of territory gained came at a steep price. Despite the challenges, the U.S. forces remained determined. The famous image of Marines raising the American flag on Mount Suribachi on February 23 captured the resolve and spirit of the assault, becoming one of the most iconic images of the war. However, the battle was far from over. The fighting continued for several more weeks. The U.S. Marines, supported by naval bombardments and airstrikes, pushed deeper into the island. The Japanese defenders, outnumbered but resolute, fought fiercely. The battle was marked by extreme courage on both sides, with soldiers demonstrating incredible bravery under fire. By the end of March 1945, after more than a month of intense combat, Iwo Jima was finally secured. The victory came at a great cost, with thousands of Marines lost or wounded. The Japanese had also suffered heavy casualties, and the island was virtually destroyed by the fighting. Although the capture of Iwo Jima was a strategic win for the United States, it highlighted the fierce resistance that the Japanese would continue to put up as the war drew closer to its conclusion. Amidst the chaos of Iwo Jima, one Marine's actions stood out. He was part of a crew operating a powerful weapon known as the M2 Browning .50 caliber machine gun. This machine gun was known for its incredible firepower, capable of firing nearly 1,000 rounds per minute. It could take down enemy soldiers and vehicles alike, making it a critical asset in the battle. However, the M2 came with its own challenges. It required 2 Marines to operate it effectively, one to fire and the other to assist with loading ammunition and aiming. This meant that while they unleashed devastating fire on the enemy, they also became vulnerable targets. Setting up the machine gun took time, especially under enemy fire, and in the heat of battle, every second counted. As the Marine crew moved to find a suitable position, they had to stay low and take cover from incoming rounds. The sound of bullets whizzing past and explosions echoed all around them, but they pushed forward, knowing their machine gun could change the tide of battle. Once they found a spot with a good vantage point, they quickly set up the M2 Browning. The Marine manning the gun took a deep breath and focused. He knew his role was vital. He needed to lay down a heavy barrage of fire to support his comrades advancing nearby. As the firefight continued, the gunner fired rapidly, sending rounds in the direction of enemy positions. Every pull of the trigger was accompanied by the loud roar of the weapon, a sound that both terrified the enemy and offered a measure of safety to fellow Marines. The sight of bullets ripping through the air provided a temporary shield for troops moving up the hill. Even though they were contributing to the fight, the crew was acutely aware of how exposed they were. They kept an eye on their surroundings, alert for any enemy attempts to flank them. Their teamwork and focus allowed them to hold their position, keeping the pressure on Japanese forces and enabling more Marines to advance. Despite the danger, the Marine operating the M2 was driven by a deep sense of duty. He wanted to protect his brothers in arms and ensure that they could push forward. In a battle like Iwo Jima, every action mattered, and his dedication exemplified the courage shown by many that day. As the battle raged on Iwo Jima, the Japanese defenders dug in deep. They had created a complex network of bunkers and tunnels, carefully positioned to optimize their defensive capabilities. This setup allowed them to withstand the heavy bombardments from the U.S. forces and make it extremely difficult for the Marines to advance. Each bunker had been strategically placed to cover key areas of the island and to provide overlapping fields of fire. The Japanese soldiers were well prepared and motivated, knowing they were defending their homeland. From these fortified positions, they could fire at the advancing U.S. troops with deadly precision. As U.S. forces pushed forward, they faced intense resistance. The Marines quickly learned that hitting these well-established positions would not be easy. Every time they tried to advance, they encountered rapid gunfire that forced them to take cover. The Japanese defenders fired from hidden vantage points, catching many Marines off guard and inflicting heavy casualties. Despite the relentless bombardment from naval ships and the Air Force, the Japanese troops remained entrenched. They used their knowledge of the island's terrain to their advantage, making it hard for the Marines to pinpoint their locations. The bunkers provided shelter, and from there, the Japanese soldiers could coordinate their defenses effectively. As the minutes turned into hours, the U.S. troops were tested to their limits. They attempted various tactics, including trying to outflank the bunkers or calling in air support, but every strategy came with risks. The cost of advancing was steep. They lost many brave Marines who charged forward, and every loss weighed heavily on those who remained. Amidst the desperate situation, the determination of the U.S. forces did not waver. Each Marine knew that taking Iwo Jima was vital for the broader efforts in the Pacific. They pressed on, although the toll of the fight was becoming painfully clear. The fighting was fierce, and both sides demonstrated incredible bravery in the face of adversity. Seeing their fellow Marines struggle to advance against the Japanese bunkers, the Marine and his partner knew they had to find a new approach. They understood that to move forward, they needed to systematically eliminate these fortified positions. The bunkers were strong, and each one posed a significant threat, but the two Marines were determined to make a difference. They quickly developed a plan to coordinate their efforts with artillery support. First, they needed to mark the targets for the artillery units positioned off the island. As they moved cautiously, they kept an eye on the enemy's positions, looking for opportunities to signal where the firepower was most needed. With their hearts racing, they found a small rise that gave them a better view of some of the key bunkers. Using a map and a field radio, they communicated with the artillery crews. They described the locations of the bunkers in detail while also listening for any updates from their comrades in the field. Once they had marked the targets, the Marine and his partner took cover and prepared for the strike. They felt the ground tremble beneath them as the artillery began to fire. The sound was thunderous, and their eyes were fixed on the impact points. The goal was to create enough destruction to weaken the enemy defenses, allowing the Marines to advance more safely. As explosions rocked the terrain, they could see the Japanese defenders scrambling to adjust their positions. The coordinated effort seemed to be working, and hope began to stir among the U.S. troops. The Marine and his partner communicated back with the artillery, providing feedback on the effectiveness of the strikes. After several rounds of bombardment, they felt it was time to move forward again. This time, they were not just two Marines. They were part of a larger effort to reclaim the island. They knew there would still be dangers ahead, but with artillery support softening the defenses, there was a chance to push through and make progress. With a deep breath, they prepared to lead the way, focused on their mission and the safety of their fellow Marines. In a fierce 30-minute assault, the Marine manning the M2 Browning machine gun unleashed a torrent of fire. The weapon roared to life, sending bullets flying towards the entrenched Japanese positions. His partner worked alongside him, reloading the gun and keeping their aim steady. They were determined to break the stronghold that had kept U.S. forces at bay for too long. As they fired, aerial artillery barrages were called in to support their advance. The sound of explosions filled the air, shaking the ground beneath them. Each blast from the artillery struck close to the bunkers, creating chaos among enemy ranks. The combination of the machine gun and the artillery was powerful, and the impact was beginning to show. The Marine focused intently on his target. With each burst from the M2 Browning, he watched as one after another, 16 Japanese bunkers fell. The fire from the machine gun, combined with the overhead bombardments, uprooted the formidable defenses that had previously held them at a standstill. It felt like a breakthrough, and a surge of hope filled the air. As more bunkers crumbled, the morale of the U.S. troops soared. They could see that the meticulous coordination of artillery and heavy fire from their position was making a real difference. The Marines around the gunner rallied, encouraged by the sight of their enemy's defenses finally giving way. However, the battle was still intense. While the Marine kept the M2 Browning firing, he remained acutely aware of the dangers surrounding them. He understood that despite the progress, the Japanese soldiers were still fighting fiercely, regrouping, and trying to hold their ground. He could see flashes of weapons firing back from the remaining bunkers, but the rhythm of battle began to change. As the last of the bunkers fell, the Marines found a new energy. They knew now was the time to push forward. With the firepower they had unleashed, they were ready to seize the opportunity and advance, feeling a renewed sense of determination and camaraderie as they pressed on into the fray. The successful demolition of the Japanese bunkers turned the tide for the Marines on Iwo Jima. As the last of the bunkers crumbled, an undeniable energy filled the air. Cheers erupted among the U.S. troops, each burst of excitement echoing the sense of victory that was beginning to take hold. The Marines felt a renewed strength and purpose, ready to press forward into the battle. The bravery and tactical execution of the Marine manning the M2 Browning and his crew became a symbol of the courage displayed throughout the campaign. They had faced incredible challenges, and their determination to push through had inspired those around them. Fellow Marines looked to them as an example. It wasn't just about the firepower, it was about teamwork, trust, and the willingness to put themselves in harm's way for one another. As troops moved in to capitalize on the weakened positions, the morale among the Marines soared. The sense of camaraderie grew stronger, with each soldier feeling the weight of their mission and the sacrifices made. They knew that capturing Iwo Jima was vital for the overall campaign in the Pacific, and every inch gained was a step closer to that goal. With the bunkers falling and their spirits lifted, the Marines pressed forward. They worked together to clear out the remaining enemy positions, moving methodically yet with urgency. Each success fueled their drive, encouraging them to keep pushing until the island was firmly in their hands. In the end, the hard-fought Battle of Iwo Jima resulted in a significant victory for the Allied forces. They had suffered losses, but they had also shown extraordinary resilience and determination. The actions of that Marine and his crew were a testament to the spirit of the Marines in this grueling campaign, and their bravery would be remembered as part of a defining moment in the war.